And we are live. I make sure right away I start talking because I know this records and there's like a chance someone might watch it later. Sometimes you hop on like someone else's recording and they're like doing nothing because they're waiting for people to show up and it's being recorded. So you got to just start talking. So I actually got some great questions. I got like several questions here. Crazy Graves is one of them. So thank you for joining, sir. That's a really good question you had. I loved your question. I am going to get through it. I got about 5 or 6 questions here to dive into. And I'm going to do my best to keep it simple, but also really informative. So a couple of the questions I'm going to go over first are the ones that actually came from my do-it-yourself fitness group, which, by the way, if you want to join the group, it's free. It's a free do-it-yourself fitness group. I give you a ton of video webinars in there that literally walk you through how to make a meal plan the same way I walk through my clients on how to make their meal plan. There's literally a meal plan maker that if you just enter your weight and all that stuff, it spits it out. And shows you how to include your cookies and everything. It shows you how to set up your training. And in there, we have the Facebook group, and you can ask me questions about, okay, what's not working, what is working. And so Teresa had actually asked me directly this, so I just wanted to bring it up in the Q&A. Now, she broke down her whole meal plan for me roughly. The thing with this whole meal plan is it looks very specific and it's great. And the overarching thing I want to say to Teresa is this looks really good, but what would be even better is because you're like, she's done such a good job of writing down all these foods. And then I would calculate it. Like, you should know exactly how many, like if you're writing it out, you figure out the calories of it. And what I did is I think this is a great idea. It's not foolproof because I think there's still going to be flaws to it. But if you're just getting used to eating healthy and you want to be like, okay, I don't feel like calorie tracking, but maybe I'll just write down what I eat. To have a sense of it, write down roughly what you eat if you're not all the way into measuring and everything, and then ask ChatGPT. Like, it's a really good calculation. Alan from the group is actually doing that himself. Now, I think there's holes in that. ChatGPT won't be 100% accurate, but it could be maybe 60, 70% accurate. Maybe you can get a good sense of it. And when I looked at what she had said that she eats and I put it in ChatGPT, it looked like she was lower for her calories. Now, if she's eating that consistently, maybe it is a decent amount, but you know, I'm biased to know what direction you're going, you got to actually calculate it. So I like to use the analogy of, there's 2 analogies. The classic one is budgeting. Like if you're trying to save money and it's like, yeah, I'm trying to save money. Have you figured out your budget? No. It's like, I just kind of try to save. It's like, that's like kind of trying not to eat too much. If you're not accountable to how many calories you're having, you don't know. And calories are still going to have an error rate of 10 to 20%. So with that, you actually want to try to hedge your bets to be as close as you can. And my advice to this would be to first track what you can in a day consistently and use a food scale, because that makes a huge difference for accuracy. Like a tablespoon versus 10 grams or 15 grams, I think it's usually 15 to 16 grams, for example, like peanut butter, way more accurate. And I went without a food scale for years, and finally I did it, day and night difference. So I would food scale it and I would know it. Now, that's not to say you have to track and use food scales forever, but it starts you out with a rubric. You do it for I'm always big on the 2-week challenge. Do 2 weeks of rigidity and then work on flexibility. But if you're so flexible with it now and you don't know where it's actually leading you, you'll be kind of wasting your time. And so if I wanted to get stronger, that's the other analogy I was going to say, is if I went to a gym and all the dumbbells had no numbers on them, and you know, I was like, I want to get stronger. How am I going to know? Because I don't know any of the weights. I don't know how I'm progressing. So it's pretty helpful to just be willing to track it. And if, you know, Teresa would have approached me and said, hey, I'm having this many calories and this many grams of protein, and I know because I'm tracking it, I could give you far better insight, because you have the information of what's there as far as like the different food types, but what is the specific quantity? And it makes a big difference. So I think you had the right premise that you have good whole foods. You even mentioned that you like to fit in some treats like dark chocolate, some wines. Love it. How often, what days, that really matters. And you're saying that you try not to have snacks, which is great. Snacking can be a bad habit, because if you snack, you eat 3 times a day, but you snack 3 times a day, that could be like having 3 meals, and it can add up a lot throughout the day. And you're saying you use fruit or a veggie, which is a great instinct. So those are all good instincts. The other thing I was going to mention, so if you calorie track, do a 2-week challenge, and like have a consistency calendar. I got this from Jordan Sayet. Print out a calendar and just write D for deficit in red, M in black for maintenance, and blue for or S for surplus. And then see how many like red days you have, which would be good. It's like it highlights like, yeah, I'm getting the deficit. And then see how many S days you have, because that will negate any of the deficit days. And you'll see why you're on the right track or not. The 2-week challenge works so often for many people, so I highly recommend it. So I hope that helps. If you want any more details, Teresa, please reach out to me. I hope that gives you some direction. But again, I think it's you're so specific with what you're eating, but be specific to the calories and the protein intake, and then we can actually go a lot farther from there. Another quick question I had here from the group was, when do you know to switch up your programming? And now for strength training, I think that's a great question. So we'll talk about this just more on a neurological basis, like a training basis. Like you can do the same thing for a long time before like diminishing returns even happens. But there's a couple things. One is like, when do you get diminishing returns? And I think you would know when you're not actually seeing progression. The other thing too is I think it's helpful to actually plan on progression models looking at 4 to 8 week terms. It doesn't mean you have to change the program, because the more you do a thing, the better you get efficient at the thing. So it can actually be quite helpful to do that thing again and again and again. But if you do, say, a training program, it's a squat, bench, and dead, whatever it is, right, that you're trying to get good at, you have a program you like, because it sounds like you're doing one. It's like, should I change it? Like, okay, are you considering progression of intensity or reps? Like, how are you changing your progression? Because each week there should be something about it that makes it a little bit harder, or you're going a little harder. So are you doing more reps, more weight, or are you not? And I believe in the step loading method of week 1, I hate those thumbs. Can someone please tell me how to get rid of them? I hate them. So week 1 is this intensity, week 2 is this intensity, week 3, week 4, bring it back down. But I'm going to bring it back down to like here. So my new week 1, I could do the same program, but my new week 1 is, say, higher reps, lighter weight, but it's heavier weight than it was the month prior. And then you step load it up again. So I would do that for at least, like, if you like the program, you're comfortable with it, I would do it for 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. That leads me into the next thing is like, when do you get sick of it? Is really what matters a lot. Or when do you maybe feel some joint issues? Like, some exercises, just keep in your program. Like, just if you like them, you get a good stimulus. I mean, I'm powerlifting. I'm keeping the bench, squat, and deadlift in it every single program. Most clients that really like those lifts, I keep them in there, but we change the accessory every 4 weeks. Because mostly, honestly, for cognitive reasons, because they're going to get sick of it. And I want them to have variety, and I want them to, be able to express their body in different ways. So you can, the short, long answer is you can do it a long time till you don't see progress. And then from there, what I would do is I would consider step loading it. So every 4 weeks, ramp up, bring it back down, make it a lighter week 1, ramp up, back down. Please get rid of these thumbs. And then the other thing is maybe do that same step loading method, but consider just changing your accessory. So your accessory is anything other than your main lifts. So, bench would be a main lift. I gotta not use my thumb. Bench would be a main lift. Deadlift would be a main lift. Squat, whatever you like, higher up, the highest importance. It could be maybe a leg press is your squat, right? Maybe hack machine, the hack squat machine, the chest press machine. Those are your major lifts, the compound movements. And then instead of doing dumbbell flies, you do cable flies. Instead of doing a lat pull down, you do a single arm lat pull down. But you just have something similar to what you had for your accessory work, but you change it every 4 weeks. And that's roughly what I would mention. You don't need to change it. Like, as long as you could do the same thing for 8 months. It just depends on when things get difficult. And when I have people building muscle, I actually intentionally push them to week 5 and week 6 to go hard, because that's where a lot of the benefits for muscle building happen, is when you're staying in a high volume. So we start at a lower volume and we grow into them. Like, can you go another week? Can you go another week? Can you go another week? Because that's where all the good stuff happens. So hopefully I answered that pretty well. Any questions, again, Alan, reach out, mention in the group, and we'll go further on what kind of program design you have, and we can go more in depth. I think we're actually chatting this Friday, so we'll go more in depth this Friday. Okay, so I got 4 more questions here. Best advice for bulking when you have a high metabolism. And so this isn't a typical person to answer, but someone who's trying to build muscle, this is a really true thing. And anyone who's trying to lose weight can appreciate this a little bit. There's going to be basically all the advice that you give fat loss people, you don't take. You do the opposite. It's like, have high satiety foods. Eat a lot of fruits and vegetables. Like, well, eat them, but don't worry about eating a ton of them. You actually, here's the really funny one. You don't have to have more protein to build better. You actually only want to have enough. So what is the common thing for protein is 1 gram per pound of body weight, right? Now that's really helpful for satiety, muscle repair, all these other things. But for satiety, for sure, is a really helpful thing when you're trying to lose weight. But if you're trying to gain weight and you're having a high satiety food like protein, that's actually working against you. Just like when I tell people have baked or boiled potatoes, they're actually a really high satiety food. Then I tell them, it's like, okay, maybe don't have the potatoes. Like rice is going to be a little bit more dense. Maybe try to cook the potatoes in a way that they're going to actually taste, more palatable, less filling. I actually personally noticed, this is anecdotal, I'm not sure if anyone else noticed this, but sweet potatoes or yams I find less filling. So if I was on a weight gain, I would go into sweet potatoes and yams because they taste like candy to me. It's actually a super healthy food, but it's not good for me in a fat loss diet because I don't want to stop eating them. But baked potatoes, like regular white potatoes, I just eat the right amount because I feel so full from them. Now, a few other little tips for people who are with a high metabolism, have a hard time losing weight, is for sure, like, only your protein number you need, which might even be like 0.7 of your body weight. As I mentioned, 1 gram per pound of body weight is what you need if you're trying to gain weight. 0.7 to 0.8, I'd say 0.8 is a safe number, is probably enough. And unless you want to eat the meat, I have clients that eat more than their body weight because they just like meat. I'm like, that's fine. But don't let that make you feel awkwardly full. Then you're just looking to find ways to calorie anchor. One of the tips that I would say is I always encourage more olive oil and things because it's a healthy oil. I would even say use fattier meat that maybe might not fill you as much. Like, for example, lean ground beef versus ground beef. I will go with regular ground beef, often even cheaper, but lean ground beef is actually going to have less fat. So if you use a regular, it's going to have more fat and it'll add more calories kind of almost insidiously, right? Having some fattier cuts of meat might actually help you. Then, like, as I mentioned, olive oil, coconut oil you can put into shakes, avocados that would actually have more nutrients. But the challenge here is honestly exploration of foods that do as much as you can that are whole food. It's still the 80-20 principle, right? Which means you still want a lot of whole food that's going to come with a lot of nutrients. And the thing is, you can have more junk food. It's not a dirty bulk to have purely just go have McDonald's and stuff like that. You need to have your main meals to be still solid nutrients, good digesting meals. But then filling in some extra calories. I have clients who he said, can I have Chips Ahoy? Of course. Like, you're having 4 solid meals. He's having these shakes that have a ton of berries. He's having 2 big wraps. He's getting his nutrients in. So if he wants to have some Chips Ahoy to get his extra 200 to 300 calories, he's having some Chips Ahoy. And it's not that he's eating it all day. Because some people, it is hard to hit over that number. One of the other tips, there's 2 other ones that come to mind. One is just a clean gainer shake. It's like the one that I find that I recommend the most because it takes the least amount of thought. And when I had a client in the past who literally would forget to eat, I told him to have the shake and we just didn't have a calorie problem. Because 1 scoop of it only has like 2,500 grams of protein, but 500 calories. So if you have like, a few of those and and it's literally just shake it up. And it's a clean gainer. It actually comes from with some good nutrients in it. It is a supplemental form, and I'm not going to lie, like, more whole food the better. But if you're having a hard time, a clean gainer shake could have, like, when you double the serving size, could have 50 grams of protein and almost 1,000 calories. That's a really efficient thing, right? It's kind of what you're looking for, is something that's efficient and effective to get you to your protein and calorie number. Only to the right amount of protein and get you well over that calorie number. And it's important to hit your calorie number if you want to grow. The other one is dextrose, which if you're doing, especially because if you're doing muscle building workouts, dextrose is something I would recommend you have during your workout. So this is a great time where your appetite actually might be going more. You could drink it probably near the start or halfway through your workout. And if you might be having longer workouts, closer to 60 to 90 minutes, you sip some dextrose, maybe with an electrolyte formula, because the salt and the dextrose will actually come into your body. Now, it won't do a ton to the muscle directly, but it will do something to your mind cognitively. You might feel a little less gas later on in the workout. Now, I'll say what will probably happen is not a dramatic difference in whether or not you build or gain muscle, but the way you feel if your workout's going longer than 60 minutes. If your workout's longer than 60 minutes and it's an intense workout like strength training or soccer or hockey, that last 30 minutes can actually be a better performance if you have those carbs. And then that's a great way to have it, because you will probably have more of an appetite at that point. The other thing, I think that was about it, except for just the mindset. And this was Simran who, I've talked to him. I'll give you the same spiel on bulking and muscle building. Is it's uncomfortable. It's just uncomfortable. And, your stomach's going to feel full and you're going to not like it. But guess what fat loss people feel like? It sucks. It sucks because when you're trying to lose weight, you're trying to gain weight, you're doing something you're not already doing, it's not normal for you. You have to accept that you are pushing against your body's natural instincts of whatever it considers homeostasis. And so when I'm trying to lose weight, I have to be like, oh, no, that's just a little fat kid in me. I do not get to reach for another cookie. I'll reach for one cookie here and there, and sometimes I don't get a cookie. Sometimes you just got to say, no, that's it. This discomfort's something I have to be okay with. And then when someone's trying to gain weight, it's the same problem of resistance. And I want to say that the challenge is different. I'm not going to call it harder. I actually don't even know what it's like. So I won't put myself in your shoes, but I'll tell you they're both hard. And what I will give credit to is that fat loss, I think, for some people can be measurably quicker, whereas muscle gaining and trying to build muscle is measurably and predictably significantly slower for what you want to get out of it. And so what I mean by that is you could see someone lose 100 pounds in a year. You will not see a natural person gain 100 pounds in a year. If someone loses, say, 10 to 20 pounds in a year, to gain 10 to 20 pounds in a year is crazy. So the rough numbers are if you're gaining a quarter to a half a pound per week, that's really good for a natural builder relative to your body weight and size. And some people can lose half a pound to 2 pounds per week. And you can accelerate fat loss. You can accelerate weight gain. So I give credit to the idea of how much harder it is for muscle building, and that it takes patience. And so no matter what, whether you're losing body fat or if you're trying to really push hard in muscle building, it just takes time and it sucks. And if you can own that, that's what's really important. Now, the same person had asked, what's healthy and unhealthy calories? And I actually like this because I'm about to go fucking philosophical on y'all. Because it's so relative. Health is just a super relative term. I could go way down the rabbit hole on this, because what is healthy, what is unhealthy? Someone could live to the age of 75 or 80, but lived, honestly, from their perception, very happy and never exercised or diet and smoked cigarettes. And so I am much of the belief that so much of health is cognitive. It is so much about the experience. But based on probability, if you exercise and you diet well, the odds of you having a good cognitive mindset is quite high. The odds of you enjoying your life is much higher. And so, just to go back to the calories thing, healthy is going to be determinant on the individual and their goals and their perception of what is going to be happy for them. That's the best way I can summarize it. And I'll break it down a little bit. So for myself, I see healthy at certain times not worrying about losing body fat. For example, right now, I am around the same body fat percentage I was at the end. Good day, Corey. How are you, sir? At the end of my fat loss, or at the start of my bodybuilding phase. So I was actually finishing a bulk where I'm at now, and I just ended a cut. And I actually think I'm really healthy. So based on what I think is healthy right now, I just feel different about it. My environment, my goals, everything's different. So to say what's a healthy amount of calories is like to fit in line with that. And unhealthy calories and I think maybe I need more context if he's talking about calorie type, because that could be really important too. Because maybe he's talking about what are unhealthy food, what is unhealthy foods and not healthy foods. And again, I think it all relates to what your goal is and what your expectation for health in your life is. And so when you're thinking about unhealthy calories, it would be like, hey, I'm trying to maintain my weight. The unhealthy amount of calories, going backwards in my health goal. Unhealthy would be to undo something. Healthy would be to support something or improve something, right? That kind of makes sense. I'm getting healthier. The calories I eat are doing that for me. I'm getting unhealthy. The calories I eat are bringing that result down, right? So if my goal is to maintain my body weight for my powerlifting competition coming up, then I would want to have 26 to 2,700 calories. I like to give a range, sometimes 2,700. But if I'm at 3,500, that is an unhealthy amount of calories for my goal, right? That's a good way to summarize it, right? And I mean, the unhealthy amount of calories for someone who's trying to build muscle would maybe, let's say their calorie maintenance is 2,700 and they're supposed to be at 3,000 in order to build muscle. If they're eating 2,000, that's unhealthy because they're going to lose muscle. It's not in line with their goal. And I would say too, we can break it down even more, be like, someone's trying to lose weight, then they just don't eat any calories. That's unhealthy as well because it's not serving them. So overarching, calories or food types that are serving you to be healthier, to be better, to do what you want to do in life is healthy. And that's even a calorie deficit can be healthy. Too low of a calorie deficit is unhealthy. And just like eating too many calories could also be unhealthy. In your opinion, a person at a higher calorie intake, should a person take a higher calorie intake? So it's a great question, Corey. Depending on how much activity a person has. But for the most part, you actually want to assume that your body can actually equilibrate a lot of what it's doing. And so you're going to have like a big spread out of how many different metabolisms you are, right? And so I'm actually looking forward to doing a RMR test at Body Measure because they do one. And you might be right where we expect you. You might be way below it. You might be way above it. And there can be a big discrepancy. And then plus, your body can be very adaptive. And so what happens is essentially your non-exercise activity, because you have your RMR, basal metabolic rate, which is just calories to exist, right? And so, I hate those things. It's just your calories to exist. And then you have your thermal effect of food, which should be pretty consistent. You're eating consistent food, your exercise activity, thermogenesis, and your non-exercise. So based on Corey's question there, okay, so if I'm exercising more, do I eat more? Now, if someone was training for a marathon during their prep run days, yes. If someone's doing the same baseline exercise and they're just kind of an active person, no, I don't think you actually should. If someone's trying to lose weight and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, I had like, 20,000 steps today. I guess I got to eat another, 500 calories because I only had 10,000. I don't think you should. I think you should look at it as being a bonus. Your body is really good at doing adaptation and the non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So exercise activity is what you're doing in the gym, very active. Non-exercise is very subconscious. So it's me fidgeting or not fidgeting. It's, how much your jaw makes you do. It's the unconscious movements. And so if you start to eat more because you're doing more, I used to use a calorie tracker religiously when I got into nutrition. And I would be like, oh, I did this much on the treadmill, I did this. And it would give me this calorie room. But then I wasn't losing weight. And that's because that calorie exception wasn't useful for me. It wasn't actually something my body was taking. My body was adapting. I was doing less later on. Your body knows how to adapt later on. So what's super important to know is the more consistent you can be with your calorie intake, whether it's the consistent deficit or the consistent maintenance or the consistent surplus, don't expect them to be very different. They might be slightly different on some days, but the more normalized you make it, not only is it likely going to be near there, but the more you get used to eating that amount of food. And you don't convince yourself to compensate, oh, I did so much walking today, I'm going to have an extra 500 calories, right? And so it's a great question, Corey, because you should just try to keep an appropriate amount of calorie intake depending on your goals, but it shouldn't be compensated based on activity, as long as you have a good calorie intake to baseline. Okay, I got a couple more here. Hopefully I answered the unhealthy, healthy calories decently. It's based on the goals. It's based on whether or not you're undoing your goal or undoing your health, so on and so forth. Protein and not so good protein sources. I can summarize this pretty quickly. I had a post the other day. You can check it out on my page. But basically, and again, we always got to have context. Appreciate this. When someone doesn't give absolute statements and they say, it depends, they know what they're talking about. If someone gives an absolute statement, they are really just dichotomically thinking on certain things. So it depends on a person's goal. So the protein sources, because what I'll talk about first is the protein percentage, and then I'll talk about protein quality. Protein percentage is just where most people should focus on, and then later on we'll talk about quality, because that'd be plant-based versus animal-based. But essentially, protein percentage is really important to know, because if you have fat loss goals or say muscle building goals, that kind of changes as far as whether it's going to hurt or help your total calorie intake in a day. And as I mentioned, lean ground beef is a prime example. And this is to make sure, because the typical person will want to eat near their body weight in grams of protein, or 0.8. And so if you have too many calories in your protein source, I don't think it's really good as a protein. Now, it's not a bad protein, but I don't think it's a really good protein source. A bad protein source would be something that's not giving you all the protein that you want. A bad protein source would be something that's maybe not even sufficient, adequate, complete protein. Like, I'll be honest, and I know a lot of people hate this, collagen is not a good protein source. I don't want to even say the word bad, because that would mean like it's doing something negative to you, but it doesn't have enough amino acids to do much. Now, if you're taking it for the sake of skin, there is some anecdotal evidence. I've heard people say that can help skin. Not evidence to help joints, does not help build muscle. But I don't think it's a good protein source for building muscle. Now, to come back to the ground beef, if you are trying to build muscle and you weren't worried about calorie deficit and you're trying to add calories, ground beef, regular ground beef, because it's like 25% protein, is good. Because you'll probably end up around 25% protein with your calories. It's adding fat. You want those calories. But, lean ground beef for someone in a calorie deficit is better, because they're trying to end up near 40% protein once they have all their calories in. And if they had the regular ground beef, they're going to add too many calories. It's going to be hard to keep your calories down and bring your protein number up. So I would highly suggest you go check out the meat. It was a grocery list thing, and I talk about the 10 times rule. Super important. You look at, if you're trying to lose weight, you take the grams of protein, times it by 10, and it should be equal to or more than the total calories of that food. That's a good protein source for losing weight. Now, if it's a little less than that, it still can be okay. And honestly, even if it's like half of that, for someone trying to build muscle, it could still be good. So first thing is know your protein percentage. If you're trying to lose weight, 40% or higher. If you're trying to build muscle and you want to add calories, then 20 to 25% or higher can still be good. Then protein sources, as far as like what's not as helpful, like essentially complete versus incomplete, and that would just be animal-based versus plant-based. And so if you're going fully vegetarian or vegan, this is something you have to consider, because then you're going to want to actually look at the red amino acid profile. Get out of here. I hate these thumbs. So you're going to need to look at the the amino acid profile. And that gets a little bit complicated. But essentially you got things like, rice and beans have different kind of amino acids. Like, this is the simplest thing to look at. Plant protein is for plants, animal protein is for animals. We're animals, right? So that's why we can absorb it better. We can absorb it better, it has red amino acid. You can include these. Now, this is the thing, is if you're vegan or vegetarian, you want to have the right mixture. But also, if you just aim for a really high protein number, and just to make sure that you have a good protein percentage, it almost can autocorrect itself. And then the best thing that you can do as a vegan or vegetarian, buy an amino acid supplement and just take it with each meal, and you'll actually make up the difference more than likely, because an essential amino acid would have everything you're missing. So every meal you have a little, like maybe even half a scoop. I'm willing to bet you have that 3 times a day, so like a third. It's not a problem. So if you're a vegan or vegetarian, you can make up for that. if you're including the vegan or vegetarian options, like the plant-based options, but you also have some animal-based meat and your protein number's high, again, it actually isn't a big deal. So the major thing, though, I will note for the things that I would say that are the worst protein sources are the things that barely have protein in them, but people say they do. And again, I'm not going to call them bad. I'm just going to call them the worst. And so this would be things like quinoa. This would be things like I would say any nuts, mixed nuts, peanut butter. It's a butter, like it just has it in the name. I think chickpeas are okay, but not great. But seeds will not have high protein, and so I think that is like one of the worst sources of protein because it's plant based, it's not bioavailable, and it's honestly really low for the amount of calories it has. It's not a bad food. It's just really not good at giving you protein. So hopefully I answered that protein number pretty good there. Last one here, and feel free to drop any comments thank you for coming to the chat. And if you have any questions, nutrition or training that confuses you, please let me know. Tracking progress through reverse diet. I loved this question. I'm not sure if he's still here, but yes, Crazy Grape's still here. So great question. So tracking progress reverse diet, because there's a very important step here that a lot of people don't know, and that is you're gonna gain weight. Okay, and so this is the perception of what your target weight is. You want to end up underneath that to land on it. And so what I mean by that is, prime example for myself. Let's say I'll use myself as an example. I want to walk around at 205. Well, then I should actually get to 203 or 202, because after I get to 205, if I were to come out of my deficit at 205, I'm going to start eating more calories again, right? So I'm going to go from the 2100, I'm going to eat 2700. That's a lot more food volume. Now I'm also, because I'm eating calorie maintenance, you're going to end up storing more muscle glycogen. More muscle glycogen, more food in the digestive tract attracts water, more weight. And so you will put on 2 to 4 pounds, maybe 5 pounds of more water weight, more food weight. That's not fat, right? And so this will totally mess with people and thinking, man, I fucked it up. And it's like, no, you actually, and again, if you want to hit a specific target weight to walk around at, you need to be leaner than that number and then bring up to walk around at that number. So if my goal was 205, I should get to 202 or 201 and slowly bring that number up. Now, I'm going to go into some theoretical things on reverse dieting. I think that's the one thing that most people just don't recognize, that they don't know, that you want to get under your number to get to the number. And then the other thing is, you can go about the reverse diet in so many other ways. I think it's super important that you're looking at it as more disciplined than I was going to say as disciplined in your diet, more disciplined than your diet. You have to look at it more disciplined, because it's not going to feel as disciplined. So you have to be more disciplined. It's not going to feel as motivating. So this is the analogy I've used since I really tried to reverse diet for years. Because I was a crash dieter. Like, when I did my first bodybuilding show, the worst experience of my life, by the way, I slashed my calories. I didn't ease into it. Did a ton of cardio. I thought that's all I was supposed to do. And then the moment that ended, I started binge eating. I went on a trip to the States, and it was about 13 weeks of miserable dieting and took 13 days. By the way, I got very lean. Not as lean as my next show, but very lean. And I lost probably 20 or 30 pounds. And I proceeded to gain it all back in 13 days. 13 weeks, 13 days. It was always like a day per week. And then so the next time I was like, okay, I got to do this right. And even then, still really hard. My next bodybuilding show, really hard. So this is my analogy. Imagine that you're trying to climb a rope. Okay, ropes, they're tough to climb. They're tough and your hands kind of get beat up, but you're climbing. And here's the cool thing, and this is like good weight loss. You feel progression. You're going in a direction. You're feeling like you're going the right way. So there is actually an enjoyment piece to it because of the appreciation of I'm seeing the scale go down. I'm looking leaner in the mirror. Like, that's actually really rewarding. Maintenance is fucking boring. Reverse dieting. And this is actually the worst part, because you're going to get to the top of that rope, touch your spot, And then we're going to say, hold on. Like, what? I'm tired. I've been climbing this whole fucking time. You want me to hold on? Like, my hands are bleeding. My hands are fucking bleeding. I'm supposed to hold on? Yes. You're supposed to hold on. And I actually try to tell people when they're doing their bodybuilding, if I ever run into someone, oh yeah, I'm doing a bodybuilding show or whatever. And it's like, okay, good. You're right. Your worst part is after the show. 100%. Like psychologically, everything, it's like every week after the show is harder and harder and harder. And I went into it psychologically very ready for it, and I still didn't quite land it. I did better, but still didn't quite land it. And what I will recommend that you look at it is like you got to do that rope slow on the way down. That's a reverse diet. Now, enough of the analogy, more of the practicality, and that is I recommend people slowly add calories back in, almost to put themselves into a slight deficit. Maybe you even just have like a treat meal or two on the weekend. Like, hey, I got my weights, have a weekend, track mildly, but then I would do like a week, maybe 200 to 300 calories higher. And I've heard a really good way to look at it is like you don't know where your new calorie maintenance is because your body, if you're in a deficit for 3 to 4 months, 2 to 4 months, you could be in an adaptive process. You could actually have a new lower calorie maintenance. So if your calorie deficit's here, your calorie maintenance here, maybe it's good to start here to start slowly growing those calories back in. And I just think psychologically it's really important to stay on that path. And some people will do it every 2 to 3 days, every 2 to 3 weeks. I would say every three to 5 days, adding some more calories in isn't a bad idea. Maybe even just do a week and a slight deficit. And so I'm doing one right now. I'm doing a reverse diet right now. So I'm going around 2,500. I might bring it up on training days just to hit calorie maintenance and then bring it back down because I just don't want to fear the deficit still. And then next week probably hit less deficits and so on and so forth. But like what you want to be able to do is grow into finding that body to the body weight to taper. And this is the hard thing is this is like kind of the on paper part of it. Is like if it was on paper, I just told someone to do it and they just did it, I'd be like, okay, you're at 2,200 calories, go 2,400 or 2,500 for a week. They just do it strict. We watch that weight. Okay, let's now go to 2,600 for a week and then or 2,700, and we wait to see it level. And then if it's level and or like it looks like it's not going down or up, then we might be at calorie maintenance. But the thing that's really difficult on a reverse diet is to know if you're actually at your proper reverse diet and to not go too high and how long to stay there. And that how long to stay there is probably the hardest question. I recommend it as long as you can probably do it until you need to do another build or cut phase. A lot of people I've heard say the amount of time you've been in a deficit, you should be in a maintenance. I think the body's more adaptive than that. I would say probably half the time. So if you're in a deficit for 3 months, I think a month and a half is plenty to do a deficit. If you're in deficit for 2 months, I think a month maintenance is plenty. And even then, it might even just be 2 weeks. But my favorite thing is to just ask a person, because what are you planning to do after your reverse diet is the real question too, right? Do you just want to maintain weight? Then you stay at maintenance as long, right? Do you want to build muscle? Because then it makes sense to actually ease into the surplus sooner. It's not a big deal. But if you want to go into a deficit, then you just got to ask the person when they're ready. Then you just got to ask them, okay, how do you feel about dieting now? And some people are like really excited after a week or two. They're like, I'm ready to get back into it. And sometimes I even notice that they can't quite get into it. I'll be like, hey, let's maybe think about doing that maintenance a little longer. But the person usually knows if they're ready for a diet psychologically. I hope that answered the question. Basically, if I can summarize, make sure you go under your weight to land on your weight. I recommend, somewhere between your maintenance and your deficit for at least a week, maybe 2 weeks, or just add up from there. And then from there, stay in your maintenance calories as long as you think you need, depending on what your next phase and your goal is. I hope that answered. I hope I answered all these questions. I usually tend to be an over answer, so I think it was decent. I'm happy all the people checked out this Instagram Live. I try to do these like once a month if I can for the Do-It-Yourself Fitness group. So I'll be on here again in April. If I get more questions sooner, I'll hop on here sooner and I'll answer more questions. And I gotta let you know, it is the week of the sale. We got a 30% off sale going on my program, and I promise you won't see this sale the rest of the year. I will not promote a 30% off sale the rest of the year, and this only goes until Thursday. Thursday is the last day that you can grab this sale. So if you're looking for information about the program, you can look at my top pinned post on my Instagram. And right in there, I talk about the sale, I talk about the program and what you can expect. You can also see client results. And if you're serious, go into the link in my bio, fill out an application form, and let's chat. Let's see if we're a good fit. If you have any other questions, don't hesitate to reach out, DM me. I'm always wanting to answer questions like this. I really appreciate everyone who sent me questions on my stories. It was really fun. So thank you very much, and see you soon. Enjoy your cookies, my friend.